are live. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Real quick, if you can hear me okay, please put a 1 in the chat. And let me make sure my settings are good. And that looks perfect. Awesome. All right, so I know recently we've been covering the Savannah Soto case for the last week and a half. And that's kind of died down. We will still keep an eye on that, but next week we have a big Supreme Court hearing involving the Delphi case, and it's going to be live. It's at 11 a.m., so that is Indiana Central Time, right? So that would make it noon Eastern Time. I always try to label everything Eastern Time. That way it's a lot easier for people to relate to their time. So I believe noon Eastern Time is when that will be at next week on Thursday on the 18th. So we will be live for that, and kind of excited because it's going to be a very interesting hearing. Although it's something that's not up my wheelhouse, we will definitely tune in. Maybe we'll watch somebody else's stream that's like maybe the lawyer, if they're going live on that or something. Who knows? We'll have to see. But anyway, we definitely want to go live then because it's going to be very interesting. Thank you, Dom, so much for the PayPal. And we got here Sharon with her 22 months. Holy cow, we appreciate you, Chris and Mods. Your love. Thank you so much, Sharon, for being a member for 22 months. And yeah, Chris Davis is asking what the numbers next to some of the people, if they're green, they'll have a number next to them. That's just a milestone, and they don't have one for every single month. They have it for like the first member, your first membership, and then the second member, and then it goes 6, 12, 24. So once Sharon, if she stays on for another 2 months, then she'll have a 24 next to her name, and then it just goes every year after that. So anyway, so yeah, we're going to go over the Delphi case since we, like I said, the Supreme Court hearings around the corner. Court TV did kind of a recent video talking about they had the defense diary and the MS podcast, which I know is not too popular to some, but they were kind of arguing the pros and cons, and I thought it was very interesting. So we'll definitely have to take a look at that. And then also, as you guys know, I've covered this case for a long time. I've even tried to dress up as this guy just to kind of get an idea of what he was wearing. And there were some things that I know this video has been researched up and down a million times. So anything that I point out, I'm sure people have pointed out years ago. But there was just some interesting things that just kind of caught my attention that at least I haven't pointed out on this case. And then it's not just about this. We have much more. Captain Howdy put out a video recently. We'll definitely touch on his video, which has got some interesting topics in it, which we haven't really talked about on this channel. And so we'll go through a little bit of everything. But just to kind of give you a highlight of some things that I noticed when he's walking. So as you know, I have a poll going on right now, which is actually fluctuated, which is interesting. It started out with about 10 votes, and Brown Hoodie was at the kind of like 60%. Now it's kind of fluctuated where Brown Hoodie's 28% and the leader is Fanny Pack Hunter Pouch. So that's kind of interesting. It has now fluctuated a little bit, say Black Hoodie, and then I'd say a third of you are not sure. And like I said, I dressed up as him. I wore different things. The brown hoodie. I wore a fanny pack, which could kind of resemble a hunter pack or a hunter pouch. But when you watch this, there's some things that really stuck out to me. One, you'll notice, and we'll dive deeper into this, but I just wanted to give you a little just sneak peek at what we're going to look into later on the show. But if you notice his right elbow, it's bent. As you know, so if you were to both have your hands to the side and you raise one of them, your elbow is going to be bent. If you notice, his elbow is bent. His other arm is more kind of straight down, kind of half circle, where you've got the more sharp angle here. You can barely kind of see his hands. You can kind of see the skin, but clearly, I've heard people say, well, it looks like both of his hands are in his pants pocket, but his left pocket for sure, it appears, but his right hand is definitely higher than his left hand. And to me, I think he's reaching under his jacket and he is about to brandish the gun. And that is why this clip, why we only get the 1 second clip, the 48 frames, because they wanted to keep that close to the vest. Obviously, now we know that the gun was brandished because of recent documents, but back when this case was a little more, a lot more things were unknown and speculated on. I think this is probably why they only released just this 1 sec clip, even though apparently it's 43 seconds, and that's due to the fact that he's literally about to brandish this gun. And then also, if you pay attention to this, what some may think is a brown hoodie and some may think it's a hunter pouch, I've gone back and forth when I dressed up as him. If you notice, and let me go back, if you really kind of pay attention just to the brown area, you'll notice there's like a bounce to it. And when I was dressing up, wearing the different things, I noticed the fanny pack would bounce. Whereas the hoodie, I even put the fake gun in the hoodie to give weight to something in the right pocket. But it didn't bounce like the fanny pack did. And if you kind of watch, you'll see it almost bounce. You have to kind of keep your eye on it. But you'll notice as especially his right leg, you'll notice it's kind of got some weight to it. And to me, like I said, when I wore the hoodie and the fanny pack I noticed would bounce. So anyway, we'll discuss that more. I got an entire video put together. And let me get this set up. So if you're new to the Monsters Under Our Bed, we cover true crime, mystery to the missing, and we always like to get back by featuring missing person posters. So we're going to do that real quick. And today's missing, unfortunately I didn't get a lot of details. I was trying to look. All we have is a first name. This is Crystal. She is 29 years old, last seen on January 5th, so that is a week ago. This is in Toronto, Canada. She went missing near Queen Street and Bellefaire Avenue. She is 5'5", 115 pounds, medium build, long blonde hair, wearing a green winter coat, blue pants, and slippers. So that is her. Unfortunately, no details other than that, no last name. I could not find anything on her. I'm sure it's out there, but I just couldn't find anything. So if you live out that way, please be on the lookout for Crystal. And then we have one more, and this is a missing juvenile, Adrian Palmer. This is out of Northeast Pennsylvania. 16 years old. He is 6'1", so he's going to be a tall boy. 190 pounds. Now it says, this is kind of interesting, he has a broken right ankle and should still have a blue cast on. So I think with this picture here, I'm assuming this means that he's a runaway juvenile. So hopefully this will have a happy ending, but he went missing at the end of the year. So hopefully if anybody's out that way and sees somebody wandering around with a cast on, You can call 814-725-8806. All right. So let's get into it. I'm sure most of you have been here. I recognize most of everybody in the chat. But we always, with the case, we always like to recap just in case there's anybody new to this case. So we'll go ahead and play just a brief recap, the video I put together, and then we'll start going over the timeline. And I've added on to this video for the last 2 months or so. And yeah, so we'll get it started
back
here
on February.
And that way I can read chat here for a minute while I play this. Let me just get this. And just let me know how the volume is.
Back on February of 2017, 2 teenage girls, Abby Williams and Liberty German, had made last-minute plans to go to the Monon High Bridge, which was supposed to be a teenage hangout with a historic trail and a really high old abandoned bridge. The 2 girls, who were best friends, just had a sleepover the night before and were excited when Libby's sister, Kelsey German, said she would drop them off as long as the 2 girls found a ride home, which they did. Although it was February, the temperature was nice for that day, and even though it was a Monday, they had school off that day. The 2 girls, Abby and Libby, would be dropped off just before 2 p.m., where they planned on only staying for a couple of hours. The 2 teens, Abby and Libby, would begin walking the 501 trail to the Monon High Bridge. As the 2 would approach the bridge, Libby, who had her iPhone, would take 2 pictures, one as they passed the first platform, and another which shows Abby looking down as she is crossing the scary, tall, gap-filled railroad tie. The girls didn't know it yet, but they were not alone.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it's 43 seconds, the video.
As a few hours would go by, the father of Libby, Derek German, would show up, but the 2 girls were not at the meetup spot. Thinking that the 2 teens just lost track of time, he would end up calling Libby's phone. The phone was ringing, but no one was answering. He would begin searching for the 2 teens, but when running into other people, no one had seen them. Eventually, the authorities would be called out, and this would lead to a search party looking for the 2 girls. But sadly, there was no sign of them on that first night of the 13th. With the search being called off late that night for safety reasons, it would be resumed early that next day. They brought in helicopters, divers, and many other resources to scour the area. But just around noon that day, they would soon discover a grisly scene. Authorities would discover the 2 girls across the river, and both had...
So that's just the basic timeline. And then, so like I said, we've obviously covered this case for a long time now. And in the past few months, I've been kind of building this overhead timeline plus an in-person timeline to kind of show you the overhead map, and then I've also built in like at the scene kind of what it looks like and kind of blended it together. And I've been slowly adding into this, and I'm sure, like I said, most of you guys have been here. I've been putting a lot into this and adding onto it, and I've added even more to it since the last time we watched it. And so, and this is just going off the affidavits and some of the Frank's report, or Frank's memo, and so here we have the timeline that, according to the affidavit, and these are the 4 juveniles. They had arrived. They had gotten to the bridge at 12. Let me go back here. Sorry. It approached the bridge at 12:43. We know that because one of them took a picture and they got a timestamp of it. And then eventually they would start walking back to what is known as the Freedom Bridge. And this is when we have a bunch of encounters, and this is where kind of we put all the details together from the witnesses' statements. But first we have at 126, which is going to be huge, depending on how good the surveillance camera is according to the affidavit, there is a camera at the Hoosier Harp store. It has moved since then, but at that time it was right there, and it did have a camera. I don't know if it's motion detected or whatnot, but it captured what appears to be a black Ford Focus, which is believed to be Richard Allen, which is passing at 127. Here's a map depicting if this was just Richard Allen and Richard Allen alone. If he had came from his house, the way he would have to go would be this direction, because obviously he's seen heading west on the camera, and the only way to be able to do that would mean he would have to backtrack around and go this way. Now that doesn't mean he came straight from his house. Obviously he could have came somewhere north or east or south and then came and then went onto the country road, but either way he's captured going west. And so this would be what it would look like, and a lot of footage we're going to see is from this guy here, Indie Archive. He has I'm assuming obviously he's got to be a local out there. He's got a lot of YouTube videos which show like the bridge, the river, or the creek, and obviously the country road, the trails and everything. So he's got a lot of footage. So definitely, if you're interested, go check out his channel. He's captured every different angle that you can with Delphi. Here's what's known as the Mears parking lot. It's kind of changed, but that was where the victims and the victim's sister would park, as well as some of the other witnesses. This is what it would be, the view if the suspect or Richard Allen, wherever you stand, would be driving, and this is where the camera would be located, somewhere, I'm assuming on the face of this building here, which isn't too far from the road, so I'm assuming, depending on the camera, it would be decent quality. Kayla thinks he's wearing a fanny pack in there, and that's where his gun is, I bet. I agree with part of that, but yes, for the most part I do agree. So like I said, this would be kind of the view of the suspect approaching what would be the old CPS lot. He would be going around the corner here, and at this time we'd have the four witnesses would be down at the Freedom Bridge circle, as I would call it. I guess one of the witnesses, she's taking a picture of one of the benches, and I guess they're just probably kind of hanging out for a minute. And so the suspect would then turn the corner, and then the entrance. Obviously, this is taken in 2023. The building isn't there, but this is kind of where the car would be parked, and the building would be right here. And so he would have backed in. We don't know if he backed in right there, but somewhere they say the witnesses that did pass by say the car was parked in a kind of suspicious manner. And here is a shot from the day after the girls went missing, so we can kind of see that there is a lot of foliage, trees right here. So he could have backed in right here, or he could have been backed right here. We don't really know. But there's a look at it a day after and what it would have looked like then. Uh, One thing we also went over is all the witnesses that saw the alleged vehicle, suspect's car. Although the two males, they reported seeing a small SUV or what looked like a PT Cruiser. They didn't describe a PT Cruiser, they just said it looked like something like that. And also the second male described what looked like a dark smart car. Then we have the anomaly, Betsy Blair, who in the middle of these times sees a Ford Comet, which is definitely different from a smart car or a black Ford Focus, and does add some questions on, what, how could she be so different from the other two? And so obviously we've kind of discussed some theories. One I did share recently that I didn't even think about is that maybe the suspect vehicle was parked there, and maybe a guy just decided to park his car there for a minute, and so you had the two cars there, and so Betsy Blair didn't see the black car but only saw the Comet. That would definitely be a possibility. Someone decided to maybe park there for a minute, maybe used it to turn around. Who knows? Um, but it is interesting anomaly compared to all the other vehicles. Another thing we notice is that all the witnesses that saw this vehicle only saw it when they were going northwest, which is interesting. So it tells me that this car was definitely obscured if you were coming southeast, which is interesting. And so now we go to the point of view of the suspect leaving the CPS building and approaching the Freedom Bridge entrance. Just checking chat here. So he would have left the car maybe about 5 minutes after, because there was kind of a timestamp when she took the picture at the Freedom Bridge. And he would approach sometime about 1:39, 1:40-ish. And this is where the suspect apparently walked past the four juveniles. There's just kind of a look of what this looks like. And then we have the statements for the four witnesses. And so this would have been kind of what it had been looked like. He would have just been in a kind of a rush, appearing according to the witnesses. And here's just an interesting statement from kind of a collab of all the witnesses. The four juveniles claim that he had his head down, walking with a purpose, did not respond to them. That's kind of like a collage of all of them. They did describe mostly the same thing as far as appearance: blue jeans, blue jeans, blue jacket. What's interesting is their Alan's statement. He says he saw three females, even though there was four. Which, if he wasn't really paying attention and was not really happy to have anybody see him, he was probably in a hurry. He probably wasn't paying attention. Maybe we know there was two sisters there, so maybe one was younger, shorter, and maybe standing behind the others. So maybe he only saw three, even though there was four there. He even described saying that he did not speak with them, which correlates to what they stated. They said one of them said hi, and he did not respond. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting is he mentions that he's watching a stock ticker on his phone as he walked, which would mean you would have your head down. And so, even though he doesn't say that he's doing that exactly when he's it's not stating exactly when he started doing that, but I just think it's interesting because if you were looking at your phone, you would have your head down and you'd be walking with a purpose. So, interesting statements by Alan's original statement and the witnesses that do correspond with each other. Then the four witnesses proceed to go past the Freedom Bridge and leave. Here was some things that I had pulled, some old rumors, which actually I'm going to play this later and we'll read these, which is interesting. But one of the witnesses, the younger girl, she said that when she saw the younger guy's sketch that came out in 2019, she claimed that this was not the person she saw, and believes that the younger guy's sketch had zero bearing on this crime. She also described that the hat had a shorter bill than a baseball cap, so kind of like an ivy cap or a driver's cap, many different newsboy cap. So I thought that was kind of interesting because it does look like that in the video. And then she also looked like, she said to her mother, and this was way back early on, I'm not sure exactly, but this was months after the crime, or within that time frame, that apparently she said to her mother that the person she saw looked like this guy here, which is, I would think, James Monroe. It's been a minute since I've covered this, so many names, but so interesting and eerily how much he looks just like Richard Allen. And she apparently mentioned that way back in the beginning days of the investigation. So moving forward, then obviously the suspect would continue his walk. They would separate. And this is where we have another interaction, whereas the girls would be seen by Betsy Blair, a very important witness. She would be arriving back to the Delphi. She would be going over under the bridge. Betsy is the one that is responsible for the young guy sketch, and she's also the one that supposedly saw the Ford Comet. And it's interesting if you look at the little statements that we know that she said. Betsy Blair was returning to the trails to finish her walk. I think that's such a very interesting way to state that. She was returning to the trails to finish her walk. She wasn't arriving to the trails to take a walk. Let me know if you think that's worded interesting, like as it's worded as she was coming back to finish it. Because that's what it sounds like. And that's what they put in the statement here. Because I would have put, if it was just her arriving there for the first time, it would be Betsy Blair who was arriving to the trails to take a walk. But it says Betsy Blair was returning to the trails to finish her walk. So I thought that was an interesting statement. She also, this Betsy Blair, clearly it seems like she frequents this area because she says it's not odd for vehicles to park at the old CPS building, but they usually would park at the closer to the trail at the Freedom Bridge. So she has a lot of knowledge about where people park and stuff like that. And yeah, we talked about that. And this is what's interesting is she made, and so this was in the Frank's motion, down in the Cliff Notes. It says Betsy even provided a sketch of a side profile of the car that she observed at the CPS lot 215. So a side profile would obviously be from the side. So I thought that was very interesting that she stated that. Makes me wonder if this car was parked in a different position than where the suspect car was. And then obviously I think people have mentioned earlier before that who would, commit something like this in a Ford Comet? It'd be kind of crazy. And then obviously, I would think they would probably have figured out if somebody did arrive there, or anybody that owned a Ford Comet within the area, because obviously Delphi is not that big. I'm sure they would have found that person and vetted him. So Betsy Blair, obviously, then after seeing the Ford Comet, she would be seen on the camera at 1:46, and then obviously we'd probably have the suspect approaching the bridge. Hey, Guinness, no, you're not late. We're just kind of starting the timeline here, and we're going to kind of add on to it. So here's a look at the two trails. This is where the Mears parking lot, you would arrive, you'd walk up, and then you have the two trails. You have the 501 and the 505. That stands for how many steps it takes for the trail. So you have 501 steps, 505 steps for the other trail. So Betsy Blair would arrive and, according to her, finish her walk. At this time, the suspect, or Richard Allen, would be at the bridge. And at that same time, at 1:50, we would have the victims being dropped off. So we have a lot of things going on at the same time. And according to Richard Allen, he walked to the first platform. He was watching a stock ticker, and then he went to the first platform to watch fish in a muddy creek. And this is the two statements, one by the victim and one by, this is Richard Allen's statement. He says later in his statement, actually, let me go to this. He stated he saw the juveniles at the Freedom Bridge. Richard Allen further stated he went out to the Monon High Bridge to watch the fish. Later in his statement, he said he walked out to the first platform. He said he then walked back, sat on a bench on the trail, and then left. What is interesting is he mentions the first platform. And Betsy Blair also mentions the first platform. There are 6 platforms. And so it's interesting. Out of all those 6, they both mention the first platform. What do we know about Betsy Blair and her timelines? I wish we knew more. Obviously we only know what's stated in the affidavit, which is very, very little. Obviously, we have witness statements, and that's why I'm sure so many of us are anticipating the trial. So during that time, obviously, we would have Betsy Blair leaving, and we'd have the victims, Abby and Libby, approaching, and then we would assume the suspect is still on the bridge. And so they would pass each other, and she saw that. She claims that in the affidavit. So now Betsy Blair is leaving. Then we really don't know if Richard Allen or the suspect had then followed maybe followed Betsy Blair and then passed the 2 girls, or he stayed on the bridge and maybe went to the end and hung out. Let me know. I know some people do think that Richard Allen or the suspect, instead of walking back, he actually went to the end of the bridge and then crossed them as they were getting towards the end and then turned around, which is definitely possible. And so then the girls would approach the bridge, and then they would take one picture. Libby would take a picture of Abby. And then sadly at 2:13, we get part of the video, which is taken by Libby with her iPhone 5S, I think it is. I think it's a 4S or 5S. I have the phone somewhere because we did film from that exact phone.
Guys, down there.
Do we know if RA regularly took walks on that route? It'd be interesting to know. I'm sure. We know that he obviously liked to hike because, with the Facebook post, what little we could see from his wife's Facebook, there was a lot of pictures of them out in the wilderness, probably doing hikes and stuff like that. So it appears that that was something maybe they, I don't know if it was something they frequented, but it's something they definitely did. So sadly, then we would have the victims. Now, this is another thing, and we're going to play a part of Captain Howdy's video, just a small clip, because I love the captain. He's an amazing content creator. And he brings up something interesting that we haven't talked about on this channel, which is one of the new things that we're going to talk about. But he also mentions, and let me know in chat what you guys think. Do you think the girls ran across the river, or were they forced to go across the river? I know some people may believe differently. I think, in my opinion, with how steep those hills are that you go down before the creek, I think it's quite possible maybe, he could have tripped and fell or lost his footing. And they saw an opportunity and they bolted across the river. That would be my just my speculation on that. But either way, they would obviously end up across the creek one way or another. Maria says ran. I think so too. We're not going to go too deep into this, but where they were found, there was a bullet. So we know on the bridge when he was approaching them, one thing that we don't get to see, but we did hear in the transcript, is that he does cock his gun. So he did cycle the gun, which means now if there wasn't a round in the chamber, there was now. And so maybe he caught up back with them, and then he cycled the gun again, forgetting that he had already done that, to kind of threaten them, to show force, say, hey, I'm serious. And that's why. And then so if you had a live round in the chamber and you were to cock it again, you would actually end up ejecting a live unspent bullet out. I think this is where maybe he had them maybe derobe. And I think, in my opinion, it's a possibility that Libby placed her phone in her shoe, and we'll explain why here in a minute. And then I think maybe they tried to run one last time, but unfortunately he got up to Libby and attacked her with a bladed knife near this tree, which would then, after she got attacked in the neck area, she would have probably maybe touched her wound and then maybe tried to brace herself on the tree, and would have made this what we call the F tree, but really it's not an F, because it's not complete. And most of these lines are vertical, which is obviously we had Steve, who is a forensic expert, explain that this design is kind of caused by when you have like bloody hand or an object that touches the tree and blood kind of runs down and it gets broader as it goes down, which is very interesting because you'll notice it is skinnier at the top and a little bit broader at the bottom. And that is just an example of blood running down the tree. Then it's possible from the F tree that he dragged them a few, we're not sure how far, but he dragged them a little bit back to the area where they were found. They were obviously had branches placed on them. I believe it's because he was trying to hide them. And here's a text message from one of the people that volunteers that actually found the girls. And he described that Libby's top half was covered with leaves and sticks. So I think it's, in my opinion, it was probably maybe there was leaves on the girl, but it just wasn't mentioned because maybe when they got there, they took different photos. They took photos when they first got there, and then maybe they wiped the leaves away, took more photos, and then those particular photos with just the branches on them and without the leaves, and then those got out, and then obviously we don't have the whole context, and that's definitely a possibility. D says, yes, the F is a stretch in my opinion. I totally agree. Olivia says, I think the killer put the phone where it was found after the attacks. Interesting. Maybe he handled it and then tossed it down. Yeah, I mean, we don't know for sure. This is the area where they were found. This is obviously Indie Archive, who went out to the crime scene. I think this is obviously years later. A lot of it's kind of changed, but a lot of leaves on the ground. Going back to the timeline, then he would probably start leaving around 3:52, and this timing is very interesting because Derek German would be trying to call the cell phone, Libby's phone, a couple of times. And so it's possible he may have heard the phone, and maybe that panicked him. Now, the phone, I forgot to mention, was actually found under Abby's body. And Abby was wearing Libby's clothing, and Libby was nude. I think it's possible that maybe at one point they were both derobed, and then the killer didn't know whose clothes were whose, and then put Libby's clothing on Abby's, and obviously Libby's a little bit bigger than Abby, and Abby was wearing those skinny jeans, so to be able to put Abby's clothes on Libby wouldn't be possible. So I think maybe he clothed Abby with the wrong clothing, and then once he got to Libby, he couldn't put the clothes on her because he had already put the wrong clothes on, and so he tossed those into the river. Then, oops. Sorry, I'm trying to. And then, oops, let me go back here. Okay, so this is where we left off. Oh, this is right. I added this in here. This is something I added in recently. I think you guys had seen this, but early on, before we had the affidavit, we had kind of like rumors about a arguing couple, if you guys remember, and we also had a female named Cheyenne who also arrived there after I think the girls were abducted, and then we also had Dan McCain, who is a local. And it would be known as Flannel Shirt Guy. And then we have DM, which is Dan McCain, and then we have D in the which is the juvenile teen and his girlfriend, the arguing couple, which is the blue and pink one. Cheyenne says that she arrived there, I think around 3 p.m., and at 3:13 she took a picture of the bridge. Or no, I think she did take 2 pictures. And during that time, Derek German would run into Dan McCain. And so Dan McCain came from the bridge and said he had only seen the arguing couple, and told Derek German, the father of Libby German, that he did not see anybody except for an arguing couple on the bridge. So that sent the father on the other trail, which is sad, on the 505 trail. Cheyenne would go to the end of the bridge, and then she said she took a picture at 3:49, and then she would walk back, go to the Mears parking lot. Now, what's interesting about the boyfriend girlfriend couple, the arguing couple, is that they were around that time as well. And it's interesting about the young guy sketch and him, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. Okay, so this is where I was at. So then we have the killer escaping out at 3:57 is where the fourth female witness, at least in the affidavit. This is Sarah, and she is just driving by. She is seen on the Hoosier camera at 3:57, and shortly after that, she sees a guy, which in the original affidavit she says muddy and bloody, and she's the one that is responsible for the first sketch, or the original sketch, which is a combination of the video and her witness statement. And so here's Sarah's PC statement where she stated that he was wearing a blue colored jacket and blue jeans. He was muddy and bloody. It appeared that he got into a fight. According to the Frank's motion, they say the problem with Sarah is that she did not observe a man walking wearing a blue jacket. She observed a tan jacket. This meant that Sarah and Betsy observed two different men. And so we kind of discussed some different possibilities on that. I thought, it's possible. Obviously, they crossed a river or a creek, and obviously they were, there's dirt and stuff, and we have no idea exactly, if he was fighting with them at all, and he could have gotten muddied, and obviously it's possible he could have had a muddy jacket, as she did describe, and what is mud? It's brown, and so, or tan, depending on, but similar colors. So this is where I wanted to get to. This is where I added some new stuff in. Chief says, did she see him in the cemetery? I wonder if he parked his car there. No, but that's an interesting question, because we are going to talk about the cemetery a little bit. We're going to talk about some new stuff. Like I said, kind of recapping some stuff that you guys have heard. But she said he was walking on the road, kind of like this, and that he was on the north side of the road when she was driving. So that would have been to her left. And we don't know exactly where. This is just obviously just kind of an approximation, but yeah, here in the small print right here, that she observed him walking west on the north side of the road. So he'd be walking towards her, and she'd be driving towards him. So anyway, let me fast forward. So now comes the conundrum. Was he wearing into our poll? So was he wearing a brown hoodie underneath? Was it a pouch? Or, a fanny pack, knife kit, whatever, gun holster? And then there's a couple of clues here that have kind of stuck out with me. So we have 273 votes. We'll end this here in a minute, but I just want to go over this, and then we'll talk about this video. 30% say brown hoodie. Right now in the lead is a fanny pack and hunter pouch, or something like it, at 33%. And then 7% black hoodie, and 31% not sure. So, like I said, I have dressed up like him, and I'll show some examples here in a minute. And I tried the fanny pack thing. I've tried on the brown hoodie. And if you watch this video, especially at a kind of a faster speed, not faster, but even just normal speed, you'll notice if you keep your eyes on the brown area, you'll notice it kind of has like weight and a bounce to it.
Oh. So notice it's kind of got like a bounce to it. And when I did both of them, and like I said, when I did the brown hoodie, I did have something heavy in my right pocket to resemble a gun. And and I also had the gun in my fanny pack. Um, and I noticed that the fanny pack would bounce, kind of like how it does here. And also, you'll notice you don't really see the brown wrap across. You almost see like a circular. And I'll show my example of me trying to do the brown hoodie. And especially that picture right there. Um, I think, and it'd be interesting, the witnesses, when they first saw him approaching, you would think if he was wearing a fanny pack, they would have said, "Oh my gosh, look at this guy! He's wearing a fanny pack." I think he probably had it under his jacket. He probably kind of wrapped it, had his Carhartt jacket wrapped around. I think as he was approaching the girls, um, if you notice his right hand, we can see that compared to his left hand, his elbow is cocked. So his right hand is higher than his left hand. So clearly he doesn't have both hands in his pocket. Looks like his left hand is in his pants pocket, but clearly his right hand is higher than his left hand. And you can tell that especially with the angle. His elbow is bent more, or his left. And so here's two pictures. The one on the left is him with his right knee extended, because I wanted to make sure. And then on the right is his left knee extended, just to show the two different positions. And both, he has his hand above, his right hand above his left hand. And in my opinion, I do believe he has a hoodie underneath, but I don't think, I'm not even sure the color. It may be black, but I don't think this thing is his hoodie, in my opinion. But I do think he is reaching into his hoodie underneath to grab it. Maybe the fanny pack, but it appears that it's almost right under his jacket. Whatever he's grabbing is right there. And here was examples of me trying it. Now these are the older days when I didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't get the exact items. But here's the fanny pack on the bottom. But notice where the hoodie's at the top. Notice you can see the hoodie much more. Whereas the fanny pack, obviously, you only see the brown. And here's when I got some more items. And I just could not get the hoodie to really recreate the kind of circular part where it's like missing. So to me, I think it's some kind of pouch fanny pack. And then you notice how my right elbow is bent. My other one is in my pocket, and it's more kind of circular, half moon. And same thing where I'm reaching kind of under the coat, and I think he's grabbing the gun. Like he's getting ready to take the gun out. Exactly. Once again, you see my right arm is bent. The other one's half moon. And so I think, in my opinion, I've gone back forth on it, really. Because when I did the hoodie, it felt right. And it felt comfortable. And I still think there's definitely probably a hoodie under him. But I don't think that brown thing or whatever, I still really think it's some kind of pouch. And then, like I said, when you watch it, just playing it normal, let's watch it one more time and then we'll move on. But when it's in normal motion, you can really see the bounce to it. Now, one other argument would be, if it was a brown hoodie, you could say, well,
if she did not observe a blue jacket but a tan jacket, he could have taken off his blue jacket, and then obviously if he had a brown jacket underneath, would obviously make sense that she saw a tan jacket. So you could argue definitely both sides for sure. Just see. Melissa says fanny pack, I think. Um, good to see you, Miranda Lee. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get to some people's comments here. A long hoodie with pockets. He has a gun in his hoodie pockets. I think so, but I don't think that's the hoodie showing. But I do think he has a hoodie underneath, and that's what he's grabbing. It's in his hoodie pocket. So, like I said, I agree. Some people. But clearly, his hand is definitely higher than his left hand, and he is clearly. I mean, you can almost make out what looks to be like something very solid right here, especially right in this photo here. Almost like the gun is right here, and he's pretty much he's got it in seconds, probably less than seconds later. And the reason why they ended this clip so quick is he's gonna pull it out, brandish the gun. Okay, moving on. I'm hankering for another reenactment. I've ran them all. I mean, here's just some examples. I was trying to recreate the white thing that was sticking out. Like, oh my gosh! If you want to check those videos, I do have them. I've tried them. I haven't tried everything, but I've tried as much as I could to replicate different things. And I've been back and forth because when I had the brown hoodie and I had the gun in the brown hoodie pocket, that felt natural. And then the fanny pack kind of felt weird, even though we don't know if the fanny pack could be some kind of hunter pouch. You know, there's many different terms and items. Um, Then one other thing, moving on to the sketches, and then we're going to move on to something that I haven't talked about as well. I am tall. I know. I that is the one thing is I just couldn't have it. I couldn't find anybody um, to do it except for me, and so yeah, I am 6'3", so it's definitely. And this guy is supposed to be like, you know, well, Richard Allen is supposed to be 5'4", but anyway, um, here was some interesting rumors back in the day that some of the witnesses described, and one of them said the witnesses said she saw the younger guy earlier in the day. Um, and witnesses from the neighborhood at the south end of the bridge, who is the source for the younger guy sketch. Now, obviously, that was wrong. She was not the source of the younger guy sketch. Um, But there was mention of someone seeing somebody, a younger kid, earlier in the day. Uh, we just don't know who exactly. Um, but that's interesting, and that aligns with maybe Betsy did arrive there earlier in the day and came across this younger guy, and she just, and then of course she came back later in the day or an hour later, whatever, and then experienced the suspect, but maybe confused the two, and she gave the young guy sketch. Definitely possibility. And then this is a video that was put out a few years ago. Now, if this is the first time seeing this when I show this does not mean I think this guy is a suspect. This is one of the guys that was there with his girlfriend. His initials are DP. He's part of the arguing couple.
And I think it's possible they had maybe been there earlier that day, and maybe Betsy was there earlier as well and ran into him and saw him. Maybe didn't see the girlfriend. And it's kind of eerie how close the young guy sketch looks to this guy. But like I said, I do not think this guy has anything to do with it.
Well, with each pencil stroke.
Oh my gosh, sorry. Ooh, that's loud. Obviously, he had his girlfriend with him. I'm sure he had been vetted early on. But just a theory, and it's kind of interesting. Let me take a sip, and then we're going to get to the new stuff here.
Trooper Taylor Bryant, the sketch artist for Indiana State Police, has to bring those crucial memories from victims and witnesses to life.
The one activity, people calling in, because possibly one of those tips or call-ins can lead to an apprehension.
While most of his time is spent patrolling the highway, Trooper Bryant has done about 70 sketches for police departments across the state.
That's definitely possible.
Including this high-profile picture we've seen a lot. The man police believe killed Abby and Libby in Delphi.
It was a sketch created from a witness. That's about all I can say.
This face and that witness he's not allowed to talk about since the investigation's still active, but it's a sketch he really hopes leads to an arrest.
Yes, I believe, the whole country here really would like to see
some
something
of you may not
come of
know.
this.
Trooper Bryant started sketching suspects in 2008. State police were looking for a trooper with artistic ability, and Bryant has a degree in commercial art, so he trained for 3 weeks with the FBI.
There were some unreleased sketches. Now I'd seen them seen them floating around. One place in particular was Twitter. I wasn't sure if they were real because the particular person that had released them, they believe RA is innocent, and that's fine. If you think he's innocent, you're definitely entitled to your views. But I just wasn't sure, at the time I just couldn't vet the
Checking with the
source.
witness for accuracy and awaiting that light bulb moment when...
So here's some pictures that he has done. And he's apparently a very great artist. What's interesting is, so here's some of the sketches he's done. And, of course, he's done the young guy sketch. One thing that's very interesting is how different the young guy sketch is compared to these others. This is one thing that was posted on Reddit a long time ago. And I don't know if it's to do with a different canvas. I don't know if anyone's an artist, has any inside information. It almost looks more like computerized digitally when it comes to the young guy sketch. Whereas these just look like penciled on paper. Whereas the young guy sketch looks a little more digital. But it is interesting that he is different from these others. That man seems to have a small limp. Yes. So that's been brought up so many times. It's the way the video's clipped. They clearly just gave you a 1 second clip, 48 frames, and they tried to do it where it looks like, because if you were just to continue playing it over and over, kind of like how I have, I think that was the purpose, to show him taking one step with one leg and one step with the other. Because I think they maybe wanted to have you, maybe if anyone recognized the gait and the way he walked. But the way they clipped it, it makes it look like he's got a limp, because they end on one leg and started, on the other when they kind of replayed over a couple times. And that's why it looks like he's got a limp, is because it's not quite lined up when they replay it with the same leg. And that's why it appears he has a limp. So here is one of the sketches that was unreleased to the public. And at the time when I saw this, I wasn't sure if this was real or if this was made up, but you do have the Bryant logo stamped on the side. And so here are apparently the 4 sketches, 2 that are unreleased, obviously the ones on the bottom. Some people do say that this one here does resemble this guy with the nose, eyes, and eyebrows.
This guy just looks like completely different case to me. But it is it is a little interesting that this one, and I think this came from one of the juveniles. Britta Med had her bingo, Chris. It's a hand sketch that was definitely been scanned into the system, aka digitized. Interesting. That's what I was thinking. Because it's got yeah. I mean, if we go back and look at the example, it's clearly. I mean, if you just look at this compared to this, or even these, I guess really, it has. I mean, oh, I can't zoom in. I keep thinking I'm got a screenshot up. But, and I can zoom this in if you guys want to see that. Let's see if I can. So, I mean, it definitely, there are some resemblance to it. I'll leave that up for a minute so I can get to chat here. Maria Torres, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. You are so awesome. Every little bit helps. We were really trying. I spent hours and hours before each show putting stuff together for you guys, and we got a lot more to go over. Do you think flopping of the brown hoodie or bag could be due to the loop? No, I don't think so. Why weren't they released, Chris? That's a good question. Honestly, I think having 2 sketches released was a mistake, in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know. Just reading chat here. Aries Fire says you'll see they used the fanny pack to overlay his hand. You can see his hand with the fanny pack. Yeah, and we even thought this too, that the picture of the video had been altered. But I had a guy reach out to me that's in like, he's really good with computer art and stuff like that. And he says it would have been blatant if they had altered the video. It would be very blatant. And he sent me some examples. And so I originally, even me and Steve both thought that they had maybe tried to blur out the gun with the fanny pack. But after this guy reaching out to me, I don't think that's the case anymore. Now, I could be wrong, but he says with the quality grain being so crappy, if somebody were to touch it up, it would actually be very noticeable. Wisteria Whisper. Ooh, that's a cool name. He's in deep thought as he walks along. Could he be thinking of what he's about to do? It looks that way. Always good work from the mob crew. Thank you so much. And I love that name. That's a cool name. And thank you so much for the $10. Oh, that's a great question too. Right. Yeah, that's a great question. How many witnesses wore glasses? Were they? Yeah. And also, what was their view? What was their angle? Even the young guy sketch. I mean, he's at least, like, I think from, we don't know the exact. I mean, she says he's on the first platform and she's at the beginning. I think that's anywhere from, like, 35 to 50 feet, somewhere in there. I know it's somewhere in that, but I mean, that's still, and I've shown examples of that. That's still a distance. That's not standing face to face. So, yeah, exactly. Same thing with Sensei. Were these close range, distant? Definitely.
Themselves to the wide open area.
Okay. So some new stuff and some theory, some rumors we haven't talked about on this channel. And so I don't know if we've seen Captain Howdy in here. We love Captain Howdy. He's an amazing guy. He put out a video, I think this week, and I love the Captain Howdy. He's covered the Delphi case, and he does delve into the, some of the speculation side, but he's still grounded. But I love his work. He's very respectful, the way he puts his stuff out. But here's something interesting that he put out that we haven't really discussed, and at the end it relates to one of the items they took from Richard Allen's home, which is very interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and play
the creek bed. And if you're going to make the argument that the girls actually ran from the north side and that's why they crossed the creek, you need to find a way to explain how the killer managed to catch two separate girls, both who were running, who scaled an incredibly steep embankment on the south end of the creek. And suggesting that they were attacked in the creek and moved to where they were found requires explaining how someone managed to lift a 200-pound lifeless body up the embankment and why there was a bullet found between the girls' bodies. The creek has always been the most bizarre detail of this case, and as of now, the only explanation that I've ever heard that seemed to slightly be possible still has some pretty glaring issues with it. Specifically, I'm referencing the YouTuber Ken Maines, who posted a theory that both girls were led across the creek during an attempted abduction that went wrong. But if they were being abducted, why did the killer park at the CPS building? Abducting them at the end of the bridge would have required either walking all the way back down the trail or down a road with two kidnapped victims, and while that's possible, that just seems so unrealistic to me. The Delphi case is like a puzzle, where some of the pieces have just never seemed to quite fit together. Every time you find what feels like a missing piece, other pieces prevent it from making cohesive sense. But what if there was a way to make the puzzle pieces fit? Now, I have a theory, and it's not a perfect theory, but it's my best attempt to make what we all know make sense. Allow me to explain.
And so just to stop there, all he has to do is catch and control one girl. The other would comply. Exactly. I agree. That's why I think the running. And there was one thing that, if you remember in the big, widely known press conference, he mentions that they stuck together. I forget the exact verbatim words, but, Doug Carter had said that they stuck by each other's side to the very end and that they wouldn't leave each other. And I thought that was very interesting that he had mentioned that. Almost like there was some stuff that obviously that he knows that we don't. And so I thought that was very interesting that he mentioned that.
If we reconsider Ken Main's theory and add in an accomplice, then there was a valid reason to cross the creek, especially if that accomplice was parked at the cemetery or near the cemetery. And that really isn't much of a stretch when you consider this.
Now, prosecutors confirm they believe there's another suspect out there, while Allen's defense team say they don't believe there's enough evidence to even convict.
The act of scaling the ravine on the north side of the creek could have been the catalyst for the girls thinking that they might have had time to escape, leading to the killer attacking them in an attempt to stop them from running. The conflict actually starting at this location and not somewhere else is also backed up by the unspent .40 caliber round found at the scene, suggesting that the killer might have actually racked his gun in an attempt to intimidate the girls into complying after things got out of control at this spot. Add in the fact that Liberty German's blood was found at this location, and I think there's a very compelling argument that this is the spot where things went out of control. Now, almost all the information found about the owner of the garage online suggests that the owner was actually out of town during the time of the murders, something that a local to Delphi might have well known. So
this is very interesting. So obviously there's that private driveway that runs under the bridge, and at that particular home, there's a separate garage. It's not connected to the actual home. It's kind of separate. So it's a garage. You could almost say it's a shed turned into a garage. Who know, something like that. But it's not connected. And they actually ended up searching it. I think up to 6 times. One of them was mentioned. It was searched up to 6 times. I heard 2 and 6. Either way, searched multiple times, which is very interesting.
The abduction site was at the far end of a bridge near an unoccupied home that the killer may have well known in advance would have given him the privacy he needed to abduct them from that spot. But more importantly, the killer was now covered in blood after things went wrong, and he needed to stash his coat, and leaving it at the scene was not an option. That coat almost certainly had his DNA on it, and through sweat or skin cells could have been directly linked back to him, so leaving it at the scene wasn't an option. And we know that the killer wasn't wearing this blue coat when he left the scene that day, because when he was seen by a witness, he was described as wearing a tan or brown jacket, much like this hoodie it appears Bridge Guy is wearing underneath that blue coat. So the rumor about the killer leaving his coat or items at this garage would make sense if you consider that the garage has its own private driveway and it's fairly secluded, and Richard Allen returning on his motorcycle to retrieve those items would not have drawn that much attention. All of which is consistent with items that were taken during the search of Richard Allen's home, which included a motorcycle cover. If law enforcement
Which is very strange. Of all the objects that they took, and I've kind of had some side theories or possible explanations, but he's got one here that is very interesting.
have been suggesting that the killer actually parked his car at the CPS building, why would police need Richard Allen's motorcycle cover? Without the rumor of the garage and the private drive and the story of the motorcycle, I can't think of a single reason law enforcement would need to take something involving his motorcycle.
So anyway, so that's part of Captain Howdy. If you don't know him, he's a YouTuber. He's been covering this case, and he has covered many different aspects, and definitely covers some of the more, rumors and speculation. But he still does it in a grounded way, and very respectful way, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people that watch him love him, and he pops up in the show. So the link to his channel is pinned at the top if you want to definitely check that out after the video here. But very interesting statement about the motorcycle cover, and that garage being supposedly searched multiple times. Yes, Richard Allen did have a motorcycle. As a matter of fact, we've seen some pictures of it, I think, sitting out or sitting in the garage. And some think that he may have left some things in that garage and then came back. Or maybe if there was a second accomplice, they could have left some stuff there and they came back and grabbed it, It's certainly an interesting theory. But yeah, so I'm not going to go through all these, but they definitely took a lot of things. Some of the more important ones, the gun. Then some weird, eerie, interesting things is they took a lot of cell phones. It seems like, I wouldn't say he's a hoarder, but definitely seems like he's collected a lot of his electronics, his older phones, Mozillas. And then obviously, I can't remember the number of knives they took from his home. I mean, he had well over 20 different knives, varying all sizes. Then, of course, they took a lot of clothing, Carhartt jacket. Obviously, I'm sure they're trying to look for any kind of fibers. That maybe they mentioned that there was fibers. In the Ron Logan search warrant, they mentioned that there was some kind of fiber, animal and or, how'd they word it exactly? It was like animal hair fibers and other fibers, or unknown fibers or something like that, which could be like clothing fiber. And so I'm assuming they have, which could be a huge deal if they could match those unknown fibers to something, say, like from one of the search. Maybe he did have cats, and it looked like a dog as well. So he could have had maybe cat hair on his jacket, and that transferred to the crime scene. So many different, plausibilities there. They did just mention that they did recover what was kind of described as a newsboy cap. They said it was a short brown cap with a short bill, which is very interesting. Took a lot of different hoodies, caps, gloves, nylon strap, bandana, a lot of different phones, more knives, some different storage devices here, SD cards, more knives, pager, flip phones, the old Nokia phone, which, wow, that's brings me back to when I got my first cell phone. And then, yeah, the motorcycle cover, which is just so odd. And the only other thing I could think of, and I'm sure there's other possibilities. You have something that you could think of, let me know in chat. Maybe this cover wasn't covered over the bike. Maybe this cover was used to like cover something else. And maybe wrapped up in this cover. And that's why they took this cover. And maybe those items, could be, the knives or the trophies were in the cover, so many plausibilities. But the motorcycle cover is odd, for sure. D1955 says, I think the jacket was a navy blue windbreaker on top of a hoodie, bandana around the neck, and biker's fanny pack. I agree with most of that. There is another thing I forgot to mention. We'll get to it here in a minute. Rainey says, I'm sure he destroyed all that clothing. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, he seems like, I don't want to use the word hoarder, but, some of these items he's collected, like the old cell phones, like, I get it, like, if he had pictures in them, but some of these, like the Nokia phone, like, you couldn't take pictures with the old Nokia phones, like the originals. I don't know why you would keep those, So, I mean, who knows? Maybe they thought the bike cover could have been used as a seat cover. Ooh. Though surely you would just get rid. Yeah. Though surely you would just get rid. Yeah. Did they search before a judge signed off on it? Sharon, I would think they would have searched. I mean, I'm sure they would have had the judge sign off, because that would be something that they would, obviously the defense would clearly throw the book at them. Now, I don't know, but I would think they would go by the book. I think that's probably why they had them in the vehicle. They probably had to go get a search warrant. I mean, but yeah, but we don't know 100% for sure. Adam Malone, good to see you. I'm working on the your song that you sent to me. Thank you so much, and I'm gonna work it into. I'm gonna work it as a transition when I'm doing the missing people. So I appreciate that, Adam Malone. Your question, what is on the screen? It's a container with something in it. Above monsters under our bed. Oh, right here. Oh, I don't know if you can see you can't see my mouse. I don't think you can see my mouse. This thing. That is, anybody donates, it's a cup, then the name rolls past, and then there's stuff that goes in the cup. I thought you were talking about in this video here. So yeah, anybody donates, their name runs across the screen, and then it fills up the jar. It's the tip jar, in short. Anyway, so let's move on, because we're going to get to so as you guys know, the Supreme Court hearing is coming around the corner.
Off the case.
So here is, and
let me end the poll here, and then we're going to get to the last part of the show, which is very interesting. So I'm going to end the poll. We have 366 votes. Looks like what came out on top is the fanny pack / hunter, or hunter pouch, etc. Some kind of pouch, hunter kit, deer kit. I've heard a bunch of different names for it. That's 34%. Brown hoodie at 28%. And 32% not sure, and 6% black hoodie. So I'm going to go ahead and end that. Oh, Joanne, I must have missed yours earlier. Thank you so much for your being a member for 4 months. I'm sorry I missed that earlier. Okay. And if you can, we have almost 400 in here. If you haven't already, please hit that like button. It really helps to get this video out. And here is just some clips from Court TV. So, obviously, next week, less than a week, 6 days from now, is the Supreme Court hearing. It's going to be at noon Eastern Time, 11 Central, which is their local time. And here's some arguments on both sides to what could happen and why some people think. And another thing I forgot to mention is his new lawyers. For those that may not know, Richard Allen's original 2 lawyers were kind of let go because of some things. Some things got leaked out. It was kind of a mess. Then they turned around and said, "Well, we'll represent him pro bono because we've got our thing set up." We were literally supposed to be right now, second week of the trial, if everything wouldn't have unfolded the way it did, which is crazy to think about. Now it's set for October, unless this Supreme Court hearing, unless the defense wins, and then they'll get supposedly a new date within 70 days, and he'll get his old he'll get his old lawyers back. But what's interesting is his new lawyers are asking, because he got recently moved to the Wabash County where Kagan Klein was being stayed at, and this is even further away than where he was staying at Westville. And so this is making it hard for any attorney that represents him, who's probably out around Delphi area or near that area. And so they got a long way to travel. And it's not like just going to a jail where they have easy access to him. They got to make, all these arrangements. And, so they feel like his rights are being violated that way. Now, of course, on the other end, they say that they're just trying to protect him. Anyway, his new lawyers have put said that they want him to go to one of the jails, here nearby Delphi, because it's too big of a hassle because he's so far away.
At the State House in Indianapolis, Richard Allen wants his original defense team reinstated. He wants the Judge Francis Gull, replaced, and wants a new trial date, speedy trial, within 70 days.
Definitely possible.
He's saying, I want my lawyers back, I want the judge gone, and I want this trial, in 2 months, within 2 months. Now, Richard Allen's attorney says, because he's locked up, he says, Allen will not be attending the hearing. Here's a statement from Richard Allen's attorney representing him in the case to try to get his attorneys back on his other case. I told you it's complicated. We have not asked for Mr. Allen to be transported to the Supreme Court hearing, nor do we intend to ask for him to be transported. We also confirmed with the Indiana Supreme Court services this morning that no one at the court has arranged for Mr. Allen to be transported there. And that's from Cara Weineke, Richard Allen's attorney, for the purposes of him trying to get his criminal defense attorneys back on his case. I need some help. Let me bring in my guest joining us tonight from Indianapolis, Indiana, host of The Murder.
Okay, so I know not everybody is a big fan of MS podcasts. I apologize. We're not going to hear a lot from them, but they're going to kind of argue one side, and then we're going to have Bob Moda from the Defense Diaries kind of argue the other side, and they both bring up some very interesting things. And there was one thing that was brought up that really kind of I didn't think about,
and I think it's brought up by Moda, which is very interesting, and it does make me worry. It's like, oh gosh, I hope that doesn't happen. So we're going to play this. It's not very long, but it's very interesting because this is in regards to what's coming up next week. And yes, I know, but it's not long.
Cheat podcast. Anya Kane, Kevin Greenlee are with us.
But
Make
it's
sure you
very
download it after
interesting.
the show. You'll be up to date everything that's happening in this case. Also joining us, he knows everything about the case too, in Chicago, Illinois, criminal defense attorney, host of Defense Diaries. You need to listen to that as well. Bob Motta is with us. Welcome everyone. You know, it's I've never covered a case that got more and more complicated after the arrest. You know, it was a case that, like, what was going on with the investigation? No one's been charged. It's been 5 years. And then there's an arrest, and then everything gets like, wow, what is going on here? So, Anya and Kevin, let me start with you first. Let's go back to that, before we get to the hearings that are coming up.
Yes,
let's
and
just
they
go back to
explain
the
that
leak
in
of
this.
those pictures.
That's why this is very
So,
interesting.
who got in trouble for that? Who is facing punishment for the leak of those photos, and what impact
we're gonna
has it
skip
had
this real
on the
quick.
lawyers represent?
To my friend Andrew Baldwin's office, discovery sitting doing. He's pled not guilty, so he's pleading this. He felt because
You litigate a lot of cases, so I personally have never seen anything where attorneys who want to represent a defendant and a defendant that wants those attorneys to represent him is not permitted to do so. I
Really?
haven't seen it. It may have happened before under some circumstances. Have you ever seen anything like this, and what's your take legally on how this has played out so far?
Oddly enough, yeah. My spouse and law partner, Allison Mata, was removed from Anthony Garcia's case in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah.
But we were pro hoc vice. Which means that we had basically.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are not fans of MS. Like I said, Bob Moda, it's really what he says. It's really piqued my interest. So we have to. I can't really play him without the context of MS. So, and it's only a couple of minutes, guys. You guys can
Send
stomach
an
it.
application to the court saying, can we come in and try this case because we're not licensed in Nebraska. So there, what they did, and it was very similar. It was a real war between the state and the defense, and Allison had gone on to a news station and made a statement, and there wasn't a gag in that case, but it was close to the trial. The judge didn't like it. We felt that we were in the safe harbor, which we were trying to even the playing field in terms of the bad press that was coming out. But in that case, it was different. In the sense that they just had to pull her ticket, her pro hoc vice ticket, in terms of an
me fast
attorney
forward this
of
part.
choice, another trial, because his attorney of choice was pulled out of the case. So no, I haven't seen this exact
How's the
scenario
volume,
ever,
guys? Can you
to be
guys
honest
hear
with
it
you, Vinny.
okay?
Amazing that your wife had a situation somewhat similar, but not exactly the same. All right, so Kevin, where does the judge stand right now in all of this? And is
Here's
it
one
true
of the
that she
questions.
has taken on some sort of a new position on the bench?
Yeah, the judge in this case has been accused by the original defense team of Andrew Baldwin and Brad Rosie of being biased against them, that they maintain that she treated them unfairly throughout the process. And so they're asking for her to be removed from the case. And that is a decision that ultimately is going to be made by the Indiana Supreme Court. Meanwhile, she has recently been chosen by her peers in Allen County, Indiana,
Okay,
to be
good.
the
Thank you, guys.
head judge of Allen County, which at the very least is a sign of the respect and esteem that her peers clearly hold her.
And do we suspect that this new position would prevent her from doing this case, or are they? You can do both. You can be the head and continue with these cases. Do we know?
She can do both. It's primarily an administrative position. You know, the business that has to be done by judges in a particular county, things of that nature. She would be handling that. It wouldn't be a problem for her to do that and also continue to be in charge of the Richard Allen case, assuming she's not removed by the Supreme Court.
So yeah, so that it was interesting to hear that because a lot of people are wondering, you know, with her taking on that extra responsibility, would that mean that she'd step down and somebody else take over the case? Is she even allowed to do that? And this is, I guess, just an extra administration thing, and that doesn't conflict with her current duties. But then Bob Moda is going to bring up something very interesting that I didn't think about, and it does scare me. And he's going to mention it here in just a minute.
All right. So, Bob, what does your gut tell you about how these arguments will play out at the Supreme Court of Indiana in all of this? It's somewhat unusual, I would think. You have Richard Allen trying to get the judge removed. If she's
thank
not
you,
removed,
Sharon.
now he's, on trial in a court with a judge who knows that the defendant wants her off the case. I mean, the whole thing is awkward, however it plays out.
It's extremely awkward, and it puts the high court in Indiana in an awkward position as well. Ultimately, how I think it'll play out is that I think, to be honest, I think that Baldwin and Rosie will probably get reinstated just because of that issue of structural error. When you break it down to them entering their pro bono appearance, it changed the analysis. Had they not done that, and then they tried to file, I don't think that there's any way that they would have been reinstated, because the law of the land at this juncture is really that appointed counsel, you can't really pick and choose them. And if she chose to...
So that's interesting. So he's saying that before they had sent in their that recent paperwork, that they were now working pro bono, which means this isn't an appointed attorney. This is what Richard Allen's kind of hired, but pro bono attorneys, and those are the attorneys he wants. And so Bob's saying that the fact that they switched to pro bono means that now technically he has a kind of a dog in this fight, because this isn't appointed, they're pro bono now. So he wants Rosie and Baldwin. And then he's going to bring up another very interesting point.
Remove them.
That does make me concerned.
That's that. But once they became his actual counsel of choice, it really changed the analysis. And I think that the court's not going to be thrilled about doing it. But I think in terms of just for appearance sake, to keep Judge Gold on it would create issues for the public in terms of perception, because anytime the defense would file any kind of motion, and if she denies it, then the public's all going to say, oh, well, she's biased. And whether she is or she isn't, perception is everything in cases like this. And there's the eyes of the world are on this case at this point, so I think that it's a tough task. I'm very confident the arguments are going to be strong on both sides. I think they both have competent counsel in there, and I think that they're all ready to go, and it's going to be a huge day in court.
So, Anya and Kevin, how is this playing? Because, Delphi, I still haven't been there. I've got to get out there, but it's a small community. Obviously, the biggest story ever. This will be the biggest trial ever in this area. And yet all these things that are very unusual are happening, from taking 5 years to be solved to the legal complications to this allegation that there's some Odinist cult in the area as well. So how does this playing with folks out there? Like, is there some sense of, hey, we need to get this thing under control, or?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that the Delphi case seems to be one of those cases that's just unfortunately had a lot of bad breaks at every turn. And a lot of those breaks or choices seem to be almost designed to spur conspiracy theories, spur speculation, spur a lot of stuff that's not terribly helpful. And I think there's definitely a sense within not only the real life Delphi community, but also the Delphi community that's cropped up online amongst people who want justice and want to see the case solved, or want justice for the girls. I think there's a sense that things are out of control and have been that way for a while. I'd say there's all sorts of different views out there. And the thing that I see consistently in this situation is sympathy for the families of these girls. I'd say now things are delayed of realizing that this is just not good.
No, and you're so right. For families to go through all of this, right? It's been 5 years of heartache waiting for an answer, and now things are like, you got to be looking like, what is going on here? What is going on? And the delay is real. Especially if he has new attorneys, there's no way they can be ready quickly. And we will continue, obviously, to stay in contact with Anya Kane, Kevin Greenlee from the Murder Sheet podcast. Download it. You learn everything you need to.
Must have been earlier in there, because I didn't want to take the whole clip, because obviously I don't want to get struck by court TV. But Bob Moda brings up, and I must have maybe missed it. But anyway, he also mentioned, and I'm trying to think of how he worded it, that this whole mess with the pro bono thing, that whatever the verdict be, if he still has his new attorneys, and let's say they're not prepared enough, because obviously because right now they want him moved. His new attorneys want him moved because he's so far away, and they're not going to be able to have enough time to build their new defense, if they're going to go with what the original defense attorneys or whatever. And so then once whatever charge, let's say he's guilty, he'll just be able to say, file an appeal, which everybody, that always is going to happen. There's always appeal, no matter, especially a guilty verdict, there's going to be appeal. But they say he would have a good argument for an appeal because he should have had his original attorney. So that does scare me, and it does, at the end of the day, I kind of think, I really just wish it would just be his old attorneys, in my opinion, just so there's no mess. They've done their, they were pretty much ready. We were just months away from having, a trial before this mess happened with, the leaked BS and all that stuff. And I just, at the end of the day, the girls and the families deserve justice. They've been waiting way too long, and to me, just giving back their old lawyers. They had it. Maybe they made some errors, whatever. But at the end of the day, I just feel like it's just going to be ugly. So I honestly, I really kind of hope that they get those old attorneys back, just so it's just, they're ready. They had their game plan, with their Odenism, whatever. I don't agree with the Odenism thing, but that's just my opinion. But so anyway, it's going to be very, very tense. I don't know how exactly it works with the Supreme Court hearing. I don't know if they argue the case and they get what, did they decide right there? Does anybody know? Or did they have to get back to them within a certain amount of time? But either way, once again, that it's going to be less than a week. It's going to be next Thursday at noon Eastern Time, 11 Central Local Time in Indiana. And we are definitely going to go live for that because I'm really, really curious to see, what goes on. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think, give Alan the attorneys he wants, because it seems like that may come back to bite them. And that's the only thing I worry about, because if that happens, the fair trial and everything, I don't know. But, I still think Richard Allen's guilty. I wouldn't surprise me if there was an extra person that may have helped him, but in my opinion, I think he's guilty as sin. But that's just my opinion. But I still think, he should get a fair trial. But anyway, so I think that is about it. Once again, thank you to all that showed up, commented. Looked like most of you guys, everybody was very respectful in the chat. I know, especially this kind of topic, everybody's very, it feels differently on this particular area. That's why I just hope we get through this and get to the trial, and then the truth comes out, and then we can all kind of, and the justice comes. So anyway, so quick shout out to my wonderful mods. They do such an amazing job. Karen D, Jocelyn, Copper Horse, Jennifer, I know she's kind of busy on Fridays. Mods, most of you, Karen, I just sent out yours, and Jocelyn, I just sent out your mugs. So your mugs are on the way. I think most of everybody's mugs are on the way. I've just got to get a hold of Jennifer and one other, and I think we'll have everybody's mugs sent out. So thank you guys so much. We are going to definitely probably look into the case of Courtney Clenny, because I know that trial as well is going to be coming up this year. And there's another case that just kind of I can't think of the names. Anyway, it's kind of a low-key case, but anyway, there was kind of a break in it, so we may dive into that. Just all kind of depends. And then, of course, we'll definitely keep an eye on Savannah Soto case if anything else comes out. So thank you guys so much.
Especially the ones that support, really helps. Another way to support this channel is becoming a Patreon. And with that, and some people have been emailing me with pet pictures. I will do another pet picture thing probably at the end of January. That way I get a bunch in for sure. So with that, I'm going to play the outro. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. We may be on Sunday, maybe a special live for the members. I will probably put something out tomorrow. So I hope you guys have a warm, safe night. I know it's probably cold for a lot of us.